Welcome to another episode of the Not Scrum Dumbs podcast. I'm your co-host, Andriana, and that's my amazing co-host.
Grad Scrum Master Scott. Greetings, everyone.
So today we're going to be talking about what book or books we recommend after taking the PSM1 class or maybe another Scrum class that you took. And you just want to know, how do I continue learning? So we'll each go over one book that we really enjoyed and that we recommend reading right after your class. Scott, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. I will have to say my all-time favorite book is Mr. Watts, Scrum Mastery, From Good to Great Servant Leadership. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, I got a lot of sticky notes in this book. But we don't have time to cover the whole thing. The gist of this book is about he uses the acronym retrain. Well, the word retrain, but he breaks that word down, and R means something, E means something, and going through the whole spelling the word out throughout the book. I don't want to spoil it for you. I want you to read it because it is a legendary book. Now, Scott, why do you select that book of all the books that are out there? Well, that was the thing that I struggled with the most, because when I came into space, the Scrum Master was thought of and talked about as a facilitator. We the ones that facilitate the events, and just that image of what the Scrum Master was portrayed as versus the images I read in the Scrum Guide, it just wasn't the same. So when I read that book, he said some weird stuff, like your job as a Scrum Master is to try to put yourself out of a job. I'm like, what? He calls it make yourself redundant. Like, redundant? Why in the world would I want to put myself out of a job? I'm trying to get a job, Mr. Watts. you know. But then I read on, and the idea is if you approach how you interact and deal with your team from the standpoint that you are trying to put yourself out of a job, that is the quickest way to help them be high performing and deal with the problems they have to deal with. He talks about the elephant in the room. Okay, what is that? Well, that's that thing that everybody knows in your organization that we need to be talking about, we need to be doing. The problem that we really need to be working on. We all have an elephant in our room, in our environment. So are we really dealing with that elephant in the room? And then at the beginning of the chapter, he always give you like a good versus great Scrum Master kind of preface to get into it. A good Scrum Master does this. However, a great Scrum Master do this. I'm like, wow. It's just very thought provoking. Just help you think a little bit. Like, wow, yeah, when I go to Daily Scrum, yeah, I facilitate the events. I go around the room and do a status update meeting. Now, he calls that a good Scrum Master. But a great Scrum Master is the one that fosters an environment where it's like an event. In Scrum, we have events. So we want that to mean really think about the word event, not a ceremony, but really think about an event. I mean, that's huge. That's big. I mean, think of something like that. That was the first thing I took away from that book. And then the other thing I took away from that book that I think could be beneficial to you and in your career is I did not know that silence is a strategy. He talks about how when you ask your team member, when you take it to the team and ask them their question, give them time and space, first of all, to process your question, and then give them time and space to answer your question. So I never thought about that. Or maybe because I'm a recovered perfectionist, and if a person is taking too doggone long, like you are right now, if you take it too doggone long to answer my question when I was a perfectionist, I would just go do it myself. But I had to retrain myself to have patience and have time that when I ask a person a question, Scott, don't rush them, be patient. Now, here are the numbers that he gives. If you're in the UK, he said that number on the high end is anywhere from 9 seconds to 10 seconds that you need to keep your mouth shut. And if you do that long enough, somebody in the room, because it feels so uncomfortable, somebody in the room will say something if the question that you are asking that you really wanted to be asked. So those are the two main techniques I learned from that book. One, really just thinking about servant leadership and really what does that look like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? And really to be able to implement that with my team. And the other thing is using that strategy of silence. Andriana, what is your favorite book?
I really liked Scrum Mastery as well. My favorite, and I'm not going to be able to put this in like 2 points because I truly believe this is the most comprehensive resource out there. And this is just my personal opinion, but they touch on every single topic. They, of course, talk about the Scrum rules and responsibilities, but they go much deeper. They give different case studies and examples. What I really like is at the end of the chapters, they give you questions to think about how your team is doing and assessments. It's not just something that you read at the end of the chapter, you have homework to go do. You need to go and make your team better and be better as a scrum master or any other role, because it's not just technically for scrum masters. This could be great for a leader in an agile environment, or it could be great for a product owner, even developers. I think this book is really fantastic in that way. And as I mentioned, they cover the roles, responsibility, artifacts, events, and then advanced practices that are not mandatory. And then they give you some other examples as well. And that's one of the things I really like from this book is they're very clear on Scrum is simple. It is a framework. You're supposed to be using other tools and techniques. There's not one way to do something. You don't have to just do user stories. You could do a plethora of other things. You don't have to do this one particular method. And I love that they give so many other examples. I mentioned comprehensive resource, practical application. I do like the professional development aspect of this. Even after you've earned your PSM1, whether this was your first experience in a Scrum class or you've been doing this for a while, this is such a good resource that you can read 2, 3 times and still get something new out of it. I also like how the book talks a lot about team collaboration. They heavily focus on that team-centric approach, emphasizing the collaborative nature of Scrum, and they really do equip you with tools to help you lead and support your team to actually embrace agility. And I think at the organizational level as well. I think it's just timeless. Of course, the Scrum Guide does change, but I think the principles and the tools in this book are timeless. And you can continue to use them even with an updated Scrum Guide because they give such amazing practical advice. And I will say, I felt like the book was packed with information. I feel like they didn't waste a sentence. Overall, Simon and Stephanie did an awesome job with this book. I recommend it pretty much after every PSM1 class. I'm like, if you want to keep growing, this is a must read. All right. Well, that's all we have for you. If you made it to the end of this video, that means you have an attention span greater than a goldfish.
Be legendary, everyone, but not Scrum Dom.